And it's just a type of kufr, right? Marketing yourself. The commodity, the human being as commodity. Now, what happens is that you can't just phase out religion. You see, you can't just get rid of religion. It's too deep. It has roots that are very powerful. So what did these people do? The first thing they did is they moved from what they call theism to deism. In other words, an immanent God that actually has miracles, impacts his creation, sends prophets. We have to move that God out of the way. I mean, that's horrific language, but this is really how they looked at it. And we'll replace him with another God, a distant deistic God, and who's a God of natural laws. And this is the Enlightenment period, where they begin to talk about these laws, and there's no miracles. And this is David Hume, he's the big kafir of England. He's one of the big abalisa of this whole story. And he also borrowed heavily from the Muslims, interestingly enough, and again removing it from its revelatory source. So, because he makes many, many very valid points, but he basically says you cannot know things through human understanding. It's limited. All you can know is the world, but you can't know anything metaphysical. Everything that we explain must be explained through material causes. Well, the man who takes this up is Darwin. Darwin reads Hume, and Darwin realizes, how do we explain the origin of man if we remove God? Because every peoples before that has a supernatural explanation, something outside of nature. Whether it's a multi-God story, some creational myth, there's always a supernatural element. This didn't just appear out of nowhere. Well, Darwin says, how do I explain the origin of species without bringing God into it? And he thinks deeply about this. He was a very clever guy. And he comes up, after reading Malthus, with natural selection. And goes into this whole idea of random chance. And I guarantee you, evolution is complete kufr. And if you believe in evolution, you have been duped and fooled. Really, duped and fooled. We do not believe in evolution. Absolutely not. And if you understand it, as the biologists do, and you still say that you believe in it, really it's like a hukm of ridda, because Allah does not, there's no chance in Allah's creation. Right? There's no random chance happening. You know, there's not mistakes made over and over again until it suddenly gets it right. Right? And then that gene is transmitted. And really, it's against the teaching of Islam. Which does not mean there's not microevolution and things, but the macroevolution is a story, it's a narrative. It is a narrative that explains the origin of man without any recourse to the divine. That's all it is. And if you believe it, you have to recognize the religious nature of the belief in that narrative. And again, it's taqleed, it's just blind imitation because most people are not biologists. Most people have not studied it. They're just taking for granted, oh, it must be true because he got a PhD from Harvard. Really, Harvard is like al-Bukhari used to be with the Muslims. Right? That's what they used to say. It's in Sahih al-Bukhari. Now they say, I heard it from a doctor from Harvard. And read what's going on in evolution. Read Darwin's Black Box. Right, the collapse of Darwinism, not from Christians. I don't read that stuff. The Christian creation science, spare me. You know, Earth was created 7,000 years ago on September 21st. You know, no thanks. But don't just catch on to the latest fad. And it's not late anymore. I mean, there's been neo-Darwinism. You know, they've gone on. They're not Darwinists, pure Darwinists anymore. They had to restructure the whole thing in the 1940s because there were so many holes in it. And then the 1950s, with the explosion of electron microscopy, they haven't dealt with the information they've got. This is what Behe's book, Darwin's Black Box. He's a microbiologist who's saying We've got some major holes here, and Darwinism doesn't answer them. Because the cell is not a simple organism. It is incredibly complex. There's more information in a unicellular bacteria than there are in all the libraries in New York City. And Darwin thought it was just empty protoplasmic nothingness down there if you got down deep enough. And we don't even know what's beyond that because we're limited. I mean, what if they discover another thing beyond that? We don't know if there's something underlying there. Really, we don't. It's all, إِن يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ. They follow conjecture. And their scientific theories are the latest and most explanatory to them to whatever they're looking at.